Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of JewishDrinking.com, the podcast video episode. And I'm Rabbi Drew Kaplan, your host. And today we've got a special guest on, Aaron Roller from New Jersey, right?
Yeah, I don't. People from New Jersey don't like to claim from being New Jersey. I'll take it though. I'll take it. No,
Originally from New York City, though.
Originally from Brooklyn, but definitely firmly ensconced in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. South Jersey represents 100%. Yes, it's just it's still even 5 years in. It's weird to hear from New Jersey. It's just not, it's that has all kinds of connotations which maybe don't totally fit my self conception, but at this point I'll own it and claim it, and yeah, definitely.
Awesome. But he's not on here because he's living in or from New Jersey. He's on here because he does a weekly podcast called The Portion with his brother-in-law, Rabbi Jonathan Bienenfeld. Did I get that right?
Bienenfeld.
Bienenfeld.
He is silent.
Okay. They've been doing it for an entire year and have just begun this, right?
Yeah, we just started season 2 of the Torah cycle. Yeah. The idea was that there are plenty of shiurim, lots of classes about Torah on the internet, on even in podcasts, but there were no actual conversations, no talk shows about the Torah. Now, your Rosh Yeshiva went and did what's it called? Parsha. What's Rabbi Linzer's podcast called? It's like Parsha in Progress.
Okay.
Launched a few weeks after we started, so there is another one out there. But yeah, so it's just we read the Parsha, and my brother-in-law's a rabbi, so he brings a rabbinical perspective, and we kind of just talk about what we're reading, what we're feeling every week, and it's been a lot of fun, and people seem to enjoy it, so it's good.
It's great. If he brings the rabbinic perspectives, then what do you bring?
I don't know. I bring myself. I feel like I'm like the least qualified person, but I think that the combination of like a lay person and a quote unquote professional is it works well. And I'd like to think I have whatever. I have a perspective. I have the background I bring, the references I have, and I've been learning Torah my whole life. So but I would not claim to be certainly not an expert and not a professional. So I'm just coming to it with a sense of reverence and curiosity.
Great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So here at JewishDrinking.com, we start off with, what are you drinking?
Oh, so see, I knew this was coming. So I've got represent South Jersey and Philadelphia Brewing Company. I've got a shout out. I don't have any in the house, but we've got just a few miles from my house is Forgotten Boardwalk Brewery, which is awesome. But today I've got one from Philadelphia Brewing Company. Their Harvest from the Hood, a wet hopped ale, as it says here, brewed with select hops, grown by Philadelphia Brewing Company and Greensgrow Farms. So that's exciting. The label is not super tsanua, but
You're hiding it.
but as the famous Hebrew saying is, Al tistakel b'kankan elav ma sheyesh bo. Don't look at the bottle, but look at what's inside. So that's what we're gonna do.
All right.
L'chaim, what do you got there?
I've got a hazy IPA from, where is it? A hazy IPA from the Midwest in Minnesota called Shapes and Sizes.
Cool. I like that label.
Amarillo and Zythos hops. My first time ever drinking anything from this particular brewery in Minnesota.
All right. Well, l'chaim.
Thanks.
Oh wow. Okay. It's hoppy and nice. It's got a really nice nice taste there.
Not quite an IPA, almost IPA-ish.
It's like a little bit. I don't know. The taste is a little bit different than your standard IPA, but it's got the hoppy thing going on. I don't know what a wet hopped ale means. Do you know what that means?
It means they get the hops from the hop vines. They harvest them, and then I think maybe within like a 24-hour period when they're still pretty fresh, then they get them into the boil.
Nice. Well, it's very tasty.
You're wrong. someone's going to comment and say, that's wrong. It's da-da-da-da.
Well, you know what? It sounds good to me. I'm willing to accept it. Absolutely. This is, if I can't get it from the host of Jewish Drinking, who's going to tell me?
Right.
All right. It's good
Okay,
stuff.
so in this episode, we're not just talking about our drinking, of course. We're also talking. What?
No. Not just
No. We're not just talking about our drinking. No. We're talking about. So this week in the Torah portion, the Torah portion, we are discussing the main drinking event in this week's Torah portion, which is Lot and his daughters. And we just to remind viewers, just to where we are in the Torah. 2 weeks ago, at least in the annual reading cycle, we read of the very first ever drinking episode in the entirety of the Torah, which is Noah descending from the ark, drinking, getting drunk. And for viewers out there, you may remember 2 weeks ago we talked to Professor John Bergsma about what did Ham, his son Ham, do to Noah. Check that out. And then
unspeakable.
What?
Unspeakable things.
Right. And then last week's Torah portion, we actually have wine up here when Melchizedek brings out wine and bread to Abram after he frees Lot. And then we come to this week, which we have Lot and his daughters. So,
yeah.
Do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Sure. So, what we've got, it's great because on our show this week, we just recorded and we don't really talk about this at all. We are really speaking exclusively on the binding of Isaac this week. So it's good to talk about this. So Lot is Abraham's nephew, and the famous episode between them where Abraham says we just can't live together like this. There are various reasons why, but we're not getting along. Our shepherds aren't getting along. So if you go west, I'll go east. If you go east, I'll go west. And Lot goes to Stone, this place which is materially wealthy but morally bankrupt, and so they are, and so that's where he is when God decides to destroy it. So he definitely made a poor decision in terms of where to live, and so this week's Torah portion tells the story of the angels that come to rescue him and his family. They're gonna get him and his family out. The famous, of course, incident. They say don't turn around, and his wife turns around and. At least according to mainstream translations, she turns into a pillar of salt. One of the strangest supernatural occurrences in the whole Bible, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, so Lot and his daughters. Yes.
By the way, it would fit perfectly in a comic book, right?
The pillar of salt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe she becomes a sentient pillar of salt and has a career afterwards, fighting people with high sodium. I don't know, but anyway, so Lot and his daughters end up escaping the city and seeing it destroyed. And there's sort of this implication that the daughters at least, believe that the entire world has been destroyed. And they say to each other, they say, well, there's no one else around. We need to repopulate the world. So they decide to not to seduce their father, so much as to get him drunk and try to procreate with him. And so they get him drunk, and the Torah kind of, at least the commentaries have this, they say the first, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. That the first time, Lot can't really be blamed, but the second time he really should have been more responsible. But for what, as luck would have it, I guess, both of the daughters get pregnant right away. Although maybe on a deeper level, maybe it's happening more than once. Whatever. But we're only told it happens once, and they conceive, and this leads to the creation of the children are named. Ammon is the child of the older one, and Moab is the child of the younger one. And they say that Moab is kind of more reprehensible because she put the word Av, meaning father, right in the name. So it's kind of like a kind of icky brag in there. And
is that rabbinic? Is that a rabbinic thing?
I think it's Rashi. I think Rashi says that. Yeah, that's not the Torah itself, but the commentary says that. Yeah. And that's the story. It's the story. It's there's a sort of a charitable read on it that they are trying to repopulate the world. But then there's the question of like how much effort did they put into figuring out if they really were or if, maybe there were other survivors. Should they have known better? Is this a good strategy at all? But wine definitely plays a part because and I think it's just sort of all joking aside, and it's very easy to kind of be a little bit try to
Jocular?
whatever. What?
Jocular?
Yeah, when it's such an awkward topic, we tend to try to make light. But in all seriousness, I think it really does point to the challenges of wine and of inebriation in general. That it leads to clouded judgment. It leads to it can lead to some really really bad things happening, or lead to I think that it clouds the judgment and bad things can happen. And I think in that sense, there's absolutely echoes here of what we read about 2 weeks ago with Noah and his children. Also a story of parents and children, of sexual license, of so there's definitely some parallels here, and I think that's the thing to talk about.
There's a lot of parallels.
Any I'm missing? Anything else you want to kind of call attention to?
It's just a matter of where to start. So, I'll pick up something you mentioned of him not knowing, of Lot not knowing what was going on.
Yeah.
There's a direct, like, anti-parallel with Noah, where here it says, in both nights, he didn't know what was going on, right? It's like lo yada, whereas Noah, it talks about, like, he wakes up from his yayin, and he knows what his Noah Katan did to him. So that's like an anti-parallel.
So that's really interesting because it really plays into the point that I wanted to make, based on the discussion that Rabbi Bienenfeld we had on our show about Noah, because it's so it's kind of he brought down this piece of Torah that I thought was really really amazing, from Rabbi Menachem Penner, who was a teacher of his, who's currently at Yeshiva University. And I'm sure nothing is cut from whole cloth. I don't know where it comes from originally, but that the word the word vayita, which means and he planted. So the Hebrew word vayita appears in the 5 books of Moses. The Torah essentially appears only 3 times, and the 3 times that it appear when God plants the Garden of Eden. So God is making this perfect paradise, this perfect world. Then when Noah plants his vineyard, it says Vayita. And so you can see that in a certain sense, and I don't know if you spoke about this on your show, that there's this idea that the fruit of the tree of knowledge may have been a grape. There's this idea there. So, you could say that if Noah...
What's the third occurrence?
I'm gonna get there.
Well, I was gonna say, so for the rabbis in the Babylonian Talmud, it comes up. There's actually it comes up twice in Brachot 40b and Sanhedrin 70a and b, where there are 3 rabbinic opinions as to what the fruit of the tree of knowledge had been.
Right.
So one opinion is Rebbe Yehuda, who says it was wheat. There's Rebbe Meir. He claims it was grapes. And then it was Rabbi Nehemiah who said it. No, it was figs. So,
yeah.
But for Rabbi Meir, you wonder why is he advocating that it could have been grapes that they ate from? Like, they weren't drinking wine necessarily, but anyways.
But there's this association there. But the idea with Noah is that, like, if this is like take 2 on Earth, right? Like the flood comes, God's erasing it, right? So Noah, there's maybe an argument, sort of between the lines or underneath the text, that Noah is saying to God, okay, you want to start again. Let's go back to the Garden of Eden. What happened? What got them kicked out of the Garden of Eden? They ate from this tree, and they were able to tell the difference between good and evil, right? They eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and now they can tell the difference between Tov and Ra, between good and evil. In Noah's case, so now he's drinking the wine, and what happens when you drink wine? You erase your judgment. You erase your ability to discriminate between good and evil. You're starting to blur those lines. And what's the reality for Adam and Eve? They're naked. So he what does he do?
Wow.
He takes his clothes off. So his vayita is like an argument to God, like, you want to start over again? Bring me back to Sinai. Bring me back to Sinai. Bring me to Sinai. Rather, bring me back to Eden. Bring me back to Eden.
Yeah.
And it's not, but it doesn't work that way. God's like, no, that part of that chapter is closed, and now we're gonna start again. Which brings us to the third instance of that word vayita, which is Avraham Avinu. That Abraham is said to have planted an ashel. That's a word that comes up in this week's Torah portion. He plants an ashel. It's a very strange word. Also, the rabbis of the Talmud, Rav and Shmuel, have a they question what that is, with Rav saying that it is an orchard that Abraham used to grow fruit that he used to feed his guests, and Shmuel also taking the line of hospitality, saying it wasn't an orchard, but rather it was a hotel, and he has another textual support to say that you could plant a hotel, so to speak. But either way, sort of the take home message is that whereas Noah is like, okay, we're going to go back. I'm just going to kind of artificially force it this way. Abraham is saying, okay, by opening my home, by bringing people the word of God, by making people feel welcome and loved, and helping them understand that we're all in this together, we're all created in the image of God together, he starts to do the slow and steady work of bringing humanity back to paradise, back to Eden, a sort of a journey that we're still on. So I thought a phenomenal piece of Torah, beautiful message. But I think that it sort of we can take that idea and apply it to Lot, and to when we think about that message, sort of in light of what's going on with Lot and his daughters, there's something very, very eerie happening. And the reason is because so you would look at this as like another failure along the lines of Noah. And Noah was a great righteous person who made this mistake, and he's yeah.
This is a mistake. What mistake?
I mean, certainly it doesn't go well. Let's put it that way. Whatever he's doing, it doesn't go well. But I think getting drunk and getting naked, you think it was okay? It was all right? It was good?
So I have my take on it, and I've had some conversations with people who have a very different take on it.
Okay.
And I will say this. There's no one clear read of it. There's a lot of spaces for ambiguity in just that story after he descends from the ark.
Yeah.
Or disembarks from the ark, I should say.
Disembarks?
Disembarks, exactly.
Yeah.
Disembarks from the ark. It's an ark disembarkation. So,
wow.
Yeah, I know. That's a mouthful. So we've never seen anybody drink ever before in the Torah.
Right.
So, and one of the fascinating things is the same verse that you mentioned, the Vayita Karem, that he planted this vineyard. So it begins with Vayichal. It's not clear what that word Vayichal means, but I'm going to skip all the possibilities. But one possibility is that he began, that he was an agricultural innovator, and that he was the very first person ever to plant this vineyard. And no one had ever had grape juice before, fermented or otherwise. And so when he'd had probably, fruit juices of one kind or another, and he's used to drinking a whole bunch of it. Why not? And so in this instance, he planted the vineyard, he made, had the grapes, drunk a bunch of this grape juice, felt good about it, but no one had ever experienced this before in their entire lives, in the entire history of humanity. So when this happens to him, he still could be a tzaddik tamim. He could still be a simple righteous person. No one knew better. He got drunk, right? And so he doesn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the one thing that I think would militate against that argument is just that, like, the sort of the seeming intentionality with which he plants the grapes, right? We know that no one's done this before, but like it's so kind of like it's just so conspicuous that that's what he's doing. But I respect it. I really do.
I think the key word in that sentence was seeming.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I mean, you can take that verse a million different ways, and maybe next year I'll do a whole nother episode just on this verse, which is, it's not really clear what the intention was or why this is significant, because really between his disembarking from the ark and his dying 350 years later. This is really the only episode that we get of Noah, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. But anyway,
so I'm
yeah.
going to just try to find it. I'm just going to say that it really has to do with genealogy, and I don't think it has so much to do with the drinking part, but that's literally a separate conversation.
Okay. So, but getting back to Lot and his daughters, like if there's this kind of through line of like drinking and planting grapes is some kind of attempt to get back to this like Edenic state, trying to get back to the Garden of Eden. What's I think like there's the line that like things is it like begins in tragedy and ends in farce, right? Like if what happens to Noah is like a tragedy, the thing with Lot and his daughters is drunkenness as farce. Like it's just there's nothing, it doesn't seem anything too it's kind of gross. but here's the weird thing. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Though it ultimately, we believe, we have the faith it's going to result in the Messiah himself. That Moab, the child of this incest, the one who has the word Av in his name, who's sort of bragging about the mother's bragging about the incest when she names his child, becomes the progenitor of Ruth, who is the great grandmother of David, of King David, and the Davidic dynasty in line, which ultimately leads to the Messiah himself. So there's something, as twisted and as sort of, as degraded as this example of drunkenness and where it leads might seem on the surface. Ultimately, it leads to the ultimate redemption, the ultimate restoration, and tikkun, the fixing of the sins of Adam and Eve, if you're going to be, really metaphysical about it. So, breaking that down and figuring out why that is, I think is the question. But recognizing that that's the case is really that's a powerful thing.
Yes. So it's funny when talking about genealogy, right? So one of the fascinating things.
Right, I got you right to it, right to genealogy.
right to genealogy, and really, I mean, look, that's a core piece of the entire book of Genesis. It's really focused on who's related to who and how. And I think that's really one of the fascinating connection pieces between the Noah getting drunk story and this story. I know most people aren't familiar with this take, but I'll just refer people back to 2 weeks ago to my conversation with the Professor John Bergsma, which is one possibility of understanding the Noah story was that was Canaan's origin story. So Canaan is the result of the drunkenness involved in the Noah story. And here you have Moab and Ammon, who are the result of this drunkenness. So you have these two stories whose drunkenness causes the creation of these three nations, all of which, what's the connection? Not only the drunkenness and their origins and the incestual aspect, but also that they are the lands that B'nai Israel,
they're the people living
there, actually take over.
Yeah, they're among the nations that have to be displaced in order for the Jewish people to inhabit the land of Canaan.
Right, and a totally different, I want to say opposite parallel, like they're parallel but totally different, is what I mentioned with Noah, where he was drinking this juice that he planted and no one had ever had before. No one knew what it would do. He drank it, stuff happened, right? He didn't know. Here in the Lot story and his daughters, this is the furthest thing that anybody would have from not knowing, because wine pops up 4 times. We have the older daughter talking to the younger daughter. Let's do this. Let's get our father
They know
drunk.
what they're literally.
Right. Let's get our father drunk. Then the Book of Genesis says then she got her father drunk, and then after that it says, okay, I did this last night. We're going to get our father drunk with wine again. So there's like this extra sense of intentionality surrounding the wine vis-a-vis the sexual aspect. And then, of course, we have the 4th appearance, which is then the younger daughter laying with her father. So there's a sense of intentionality. With Noah, we don't have that sense of intentionality.
Right. I mean, sort of adding to that contrast, with Noah, you have the sons going like, look what happened to dad. Like they're totally like taken aback, and the younger generation is not down with this at all. versus them sort of being the instigators and the perpetrators in this case. But I think that sort of looking at the deeper level and right, the way that the generations flow. I mean, I think there's this sort of this metaphysical truth. I mean, I am about the furthest thing from a Kabbalist that you're likely to find, but certainly the idea that hidden in the place where God seems to be the most absent is actually the place where God is going to ultimately be the most apparent. It's the greatest. It's God's greatest revelation to be in the place that's seemingly the most devoid of Him. That's sort of what we see. We start to see here. This place, which is on a really certainly on a Torah level, is this incest is described as a complete abomination, and I think it's not on a very I think maybe I'm wrong about animals. I don't think animals commit incest for the most part. It's very much against our human nature. I don't know about and I'm not going to speak to animals, but certainly it's certainly it seems to be a universal taboo, and so in the greatest taboo, the most, not that this doesn't give license to it at all. This is completely, it doesn't make it okay. But the point is that even in the depths of the most profane and the most taboo, that holiness ultimately is going to spring forth and to be what's the word, like when you're refining metal, right? Like it's when you refined. That's right. That even from this, there's some sort of refinement that can come from this. It's a powerful thought. And again, the way which how we apply that to our lives, I mean, it probably is a helpful idea. In not in terms of going out and looking to commit sins so that good things can come out of them, but in terms of looking at our circumstances and looking at our failings and looking at the places where we feel distant and we feel like God is not as present, or God's plan is not as present in our lives. The lesson of Lot and his daughters and the drunkenness and the seeming lack of judgment and absence of knowledge of good and evil, that there's some holiness can ultimately emerge, is something that hopefully we can. That probably seems like a good lesson to take from this.
That's good. Any other thoughts, whether it's parallel to Noah or something else about the story?
I mean, it's. I feel like we that's a lot of it. It's going from the Garden of Eden all the way to the ultimate redemption. That covers about as much as we're going to cover from a pretty tawdry affair in the mountains outside of Sodom. So
True.
I think that's about it for me on that.
It's true. It's really funny for me. I think what's fascinating, I just want to underscore something I said earlier, which is the highlighting the Noah story, where it's not clear whether the intentionality is getting drunk. It could have just been an accidental discovery of what happens the very first time something happens in human history. There's no precedent, no transmission of knowledge of like, this is what happens.
Can I say? That's actually something that my wife and I talk about all the time, about like when we're enjoying cheese. We're always like, who was the first person to like figure out that like if you put the cheese inside of like mix it with the enzyme, the dairy with the enzymes, it's gonna curdle, but then you leave it long enough, it's gonna get really good. Like it's such a crazy process, the fromagerie, that and same thing with so many of the foods that we eat. Who's like, oh yeah, jalapenos, they burn your mouth off, but they're great if you mix them in with stuff. Like there's just all the wisdom, the culinary wisdom of humanity, and who figured it out. Even meat, like, oh, this will make you really sick if you eat it raw, but like put it over the fire for 20 minutes and it's gonna be just phenomenal. Like it's crazy stuff. So from that perspective, if this is the story about wine, like it's wonderful that the Torah offers us at least a glimpse into Noah as culinary innovator.
Yeah. I really think of him culinary agricultural innovator.
Yeah.
Right? He could have been the first to plant vineyards.
He's described as
Well,
the Ish Adama, the man of the earth.
right. And both Radak and Ramban both say, oh, he was the first ever. Like, people might have planted vines before, but not actual vineyards. And so
Right.
he was an innovator in that sense. What I think is really fascinating, just from a broader perspective, is that we don't really see a lot of other episodes where wine and drinking necessarily lead to sex. But for me, it's fascinating to look at these two stories, aside from the Melchizedek bringing out the wine and bread to Abraham. But aside from that, these two stories in Genesis, like it's not like there's an ambiguity. Like, it's directly clear that there's a sexual link between drinking and sex, and nothing has changed in human
to this
history.
day, right?
Right. It's like something from the very beginning about drinking and sex is still very much with us.
And what I think, and we talked about this a little bit on our show, is that what's amazing about that is that we have Judaism has takes such a different. Firstly, so many of the things in the Torah are even if it's not like a law, we kind of get the message and we kind of act accordingly. And here it's quite the opposite. Like you'd be like, oh yeah, see it's bad here, see it's bad there, so we don't drink at all. Like, I mean, that's essentially Islam. I would say. I don't know. Again, not a scholar of Islam, not a cheesemaker, not there's a lot of things I'm not. but certainly
cheesemakers.
Yeah, indeed. I could not agree more. But we actually take such a positive view of wine and drinking that it's kind of remarkable, given how given how the problems of drinking. It's amazing that we use it as a vehicle for holiness. And in the research for our episode, I found just a column online. Someone had written, a doctor who had written this column, and this is a custom I wasn't familiar with until I saw a friend, someone in our community. We moved to Cherry Hill, who has this custom of pouring a little water into their Kiddush cup before they add the wine. And this person wrote about this custom, that maybe the symbolism of it is that the wine has to be tempered. By the way, tempered, I think, is the word I wanted even more than refined. But okay, call back. But that the wine, when we're using the wine to sanctify a meal, it's going to be tempered with the water, which is symbolic of Torah, right? So that's I thought was I guess I could share that insight on Jewish drinking, because that's the place to do it. But yeah, so that's what I've got for you, Rabbi Drew.
Awesome. That's awesome.
All right, well, thank you so much, and l'chaim. It's great to enjoy a beer with you from the East Coast to the Midwest. It's a pleasure.
That's awesome. And if people want to check out your podcast, The Portion,
it's on. It's you can our website is theportionpodcast.com, but that's just to listen on your desktop. But we subscribe on iTunes, you can listen on Spotify, Stitcher, all the places you get podcasts. It's The Portion, and it's me, and it's Rabbi Biedenfeld, who is a pleasure to listen to, very insightful and funny, and we have a good time every week, and you should definitely check it out.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you so much, Aaron. This was a pleasure. This was a blast, and l'chaim.
L'chaim.